wasn't aware that I was supposed to be doing this morning, but never mind. Good morning, welcome everybody, welcome to the people at home. Well, it says 10 o'clock on my computer. We're good to go, I'll start again. Good morning everybody, and welcome to today's hub meeting. I am deputising for Councillor Ewins, Mandy, who is not here at the moment, but I think she will be making an appearance soon, along with the Chief Executive, in which we have Mr Molyneux in his place. I'll move on. Do we have any apologies of absence?
Thank you, Chair. In addition to Councillor Ewings, we've got an apology of Councillor Bridgewater as well. Thank you.
I heard that, pardon. Are we? Okay. Not to throw me. Okay, let's move on to declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Doesn't look as though they do. Items requiring urgent attention. Do we have any items requiring urgent attention?
There are no items. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. And then we'll have the confirmation of the last lot of minutes, pages 1 to 6. Anybody have any comments to make on the minutes, or in which case I will accept them as true and accurate? Okay, good.
That's carried for the minutes, therefore. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Public questions, Mr White, any?
There are none again, Chair. Thank you.
Excellent. We'll be done in 10 minutes. I like this. Okie dokie. We are now on to the 2025. I'm just going to get this on my screen. Oh, I beg your pardon. I've jumped. Hub Committee Forward Plan. There we go. We've all had a look. Sorry, Chris. I'm desperately keen to get through this. Anybody got any comments to make on that? There's quite a bit of a gap there between now and September, but Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise that although the forward plan is showing September for the introduction for the World Heritage Partnership Plan, or Management Plan rather, sorry, it's likely to be delayed from that date, but I will let officers know as soon as I've got a definite date. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you for that. Has anybody else got any comments they want to make? Oh, Mr Molyneux.
Just for Mr White to know, the future leisure strategy is down as the 15th of September, and I think the plan was always that would be the October meeting. So if we could amend that, please.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. Any more for any more? Oh, there we go. Councillor Elliott.
I'm just aware that we've got later, the item 10 is the West Devon Cultural Strategy, and we've said that we will bring that back in the autumn with a sort of further paper. So just wanted to make sure that that was there either in September or October. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. I'm now waiting with bated breath. No? Nothing? Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. Councillor Edmonds, we will move on to you to do the 2025-26 draft revenue and capital out turn. And then it's an outrun then.
Yeah.
Over to you, good sir.
Thank you. This report confirms another year of prudent financial management by the finance team, with a reported surplus of £220,000, which has been added to unearmarked reserves. The draft statement of accounts was published on the 30th of June this year, in line with the target date for publication. Bishop Fleming started the external audit of the accounts last Thursday. I won't bombard you with all the numbers, which are all contained in the report, but in summary, more income and savings were generated than expected, particularly from investment income, while interest rates remained higher than anticipated, with higher than expected income from planning and car parking. At the same time, there have been additional cost pressures, especially temporary accommodation, 190,000, and ICT, 98,000 over budget. Looking at capital investment, a significant programme of about 13 million has been delivered. Most notably, the Oakhampton interchange, alongside housing, energy efficiency, and infrastructure projects that support our communities. A breakdown of capital expenditure by project is set out in Appendix A. The Council's long-term borrowing reduced from 25.63 million at the end of the previous year to 24.96 million at the end of March 26. Reserves remained at a prudent and healthy level. Unearmarked reserves have increased to just over 2 million, while earmarked reserves stand at 12.8 million. Looking at collection rates, the council tax collection rate for 25-26 was 98.13% against a target of 98%, ensuring that the council maintains its top quartile position nationally. The business rate collection rate was 97.39%, placing the council in the second quartile nationally. During the year, 2.2 million of savings and additional income were achieved compared to the original target of 1.8 million. This is mainly due to the additional Treasury Management investment income generated of 452,000. Full details can be found in Appendix B. In summary, despite some ongoing cost pressures, the Council has managed its finances well, delivered key projects, strengthened reserves, and maintained strong income collection. And of course, my thanks to Mrs. Buckle and Mrs. Henstock and all the finance team for their prudent and sound management of the Council's finances. The report recommendation is the Hub Committee notes the draft revenue and capital outturn figures for the 25-26 financial year, including the overall revenue outturn position of a surplus of £220,000. Thank you, Councillor Renders.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Evans. That was excellent. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Councillor Elliott.
Thanks very much. So firstly, thanks for an excellent report, and it's really pleasing to see that we've got a surplus as the outturn again, and that's largely due to the very skillful, robust work done by the team. So thank you very much for that. I also note that the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen that the area where there's been an increase in expenditure is homelessness and temporary accommodation. And it seems particularly timely this morning after Andy Burnham stepped into number 10 yesterday and said that the first order he was going to make was that there should be no more rough sleeping. Now, I know that rough sleeping isn't a major issue across West Devon, but I just thought it was important for this Hub Committee to note that. And I suppose my question is, at what point would we receive any sort of report on what the implications might be for any additional expenditure to feed into the budget for this year? Thank you.
Mrs. Buckle.
Thank you. So with regards to the monthly budget monitoring report, as per the forward plan, we would look to bring that to members on the 15th of September. So as part of that, we will look at the homelessness expenditure over the first 4 months of this financial year. We do have Mrs. Bake, our Head of Housing, also online in terms of the new legislation which has been passed in terms of when a report could come back to members on that. But in terms of the budget monitoring position around homelessness, there would be a report to members on the 15th of September to the Hub Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Buckle. Mrs. Blake, did you want to come in on that or not?
Yes, morning members. We have, there was a launch of the National Plan to End Homelessness, I think just at the tail end of last year. We have received a number of toolkits to support that work. One of those was around further reductions in rough sleeping, families in bed and breakfast for longer than 6 weeks, things that we traditionally do quite well at, and we're just looking at those toolkits, and we will be looking probably in the autumn about bringing back an action plan about how we're going to meet those national priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any questions? Oh, Councillor West. I keep saying oh because it's quite hard to scan the room because it's quite dark and I see you bobbing up there, so it's my acts of surprise, you see.
Thank you, Chair. My question actually partly follows on from Councillor Elliott around homelessness. As we know, the Renters' Rights Act is out there now and beginning to take hold and effect. It is very interesting and it's good to see it, but obviously in the context of the current climate around homelessness, trying to avoid that, have we done any assessment on the impact that may well be for us in the future in terms of homelessness and demands? You know, we were £190,000 over budget, so to speak, because of that. Have we got any trends or any thoughts on that going forward in the mix, so to speak?
Mrs. Blake, are you going to answer that one? I was going to pass it to somebody else, but I'll leave it with you.
Oh, well, really, it's too soon to really understand the implications. We did see a blip. We saw a bit of an increase in people presenting to us as homeless before the Section 21 notices were abolished on the 1st of May. There was a bit of a sort of race to serve those, which did see a blip. It's too early to know whether that is just that or whether that's a likely trend. However, we're getting all our ducks in a row, and the next report will give you some context for that around how we will work with trading standards potentially around people who serve notice because of on a ground and then actually relet their property just to get rid of a tenant. So there's lots of work that we'll be doing around those analysis and working together across different partners and services.
Thank you, Ms. Blake. I note that we've got the next item on the agenda discusses some of the implications of that and what the Act entails and that. So thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Dexter.
Oh, thank you. The report really does show a really strong financial position, and I think and I just echo Councillor Edmonds' view and everybody else's about really the good work that has been done, and it sets us in a very strong position to go forward. What it's actually done as well is made it so that we have a strong reserve position, both allocated and unallocated reserve, which does put us in a good basis for making a legislation budget. My particular question relates to Treasury management income, which has consistently for the last 3 years exceeded budget, which is very good. So I'm just wondering what the view, if you like, for the future about our budgeting, about the view that will that continue strong in the coming years, do you feel?
This is Homestop.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of Treasury management income, we achieved, as you say, additional income of £450,000 in the current financial year in 5/6. Going forward, we've looked at interest rate estimates, we've looked at cash flow forecasts. We are increasing our budget for the current year for 6/7, but only by £150,000. So our target will be 1.1 million. We achieved 1.4 million in 25/26. So we've taken account of what we can see in the future as much as we can, but it will depend on where interest rates go and also on our cash flow availability, which obviously stems from our reserve balances. So I hope that helps, Chair.
With that, Councillor Dexter. Thank you very much. More questions? You want to do your proposal, Councillor Edmonds?
Move the recommendation, which is on the screen or page 13 of your agenda papers.
Happy to second. We're now in debate, if anybody's got anything they want to debate. Councillor Mott.
Not really debate, Chair, just really to echo everybody's thoughts, and thanks to the team and of course Councillor Edmonds for overseeing the fact that we are so strong within our budget. Thank you.
Well said, yes, great. Anybody else wish to debate anything? In which case, shall we go to the vote? All those in favour?
That's unanimous for the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
We'll move on to the next bit then, which I think is me. So let's go. It's the 2025 Renters' Rights Act and an update on our enforcement policy. Here we go. We have before us a paper with 2 recommendations on it. The first is a note following the recent phased introduction of the Renters' Rights Act. The Act introduces a number of significant statutory changes for both landlords and tenants, as well as the Council's role in enforcement and homelessness prevention. The report sets out these phased changes, including the abolition of no-fault evictions and the broader range of landlord obligations on what the Council can and can't do to enforce them. The Renters' Rights Act was introduced primarily to give tenants far greater security and improve living conditions, and is being introduced in 3 phases, the first of which was in May, so it's already begun of this year, and the other 2 over the next 2 years. Mr. Sexton, who unfortunately isn't with us today, report covers all of this. The second recommendation is that the Council adopts the civil penalty policy in Appendix A. This outlines the Council's methodology, even, crikey, and the mechanism, and I nicked that word of him, I like that word, and the mechanism for assessing and setting any civil penalties that may need to be considered. I would add that it is our intention to continue to work closely with landlords and not just club them to death with unnecessary penalties or the like. We have Mr. Luscombe with us today, and he will be prepared to answer any questions we may or may not have. I'm just going to ask him very briefly if there's anything he thinks I've missed before we move on.
Nothing you've missed, Chair, but if I could add, the civil penalty policy, which you can see before you, is particularly complex. It needs to be complex because we have to abide by the quite extensive government guidance which has been produced aimed at local authorities putting in place civil penalties. And it's important, I think, for members to note that this is a step away from the traditional local councils going to court to fine landlords, which means that, or anybody else for any offences for that matter, where we will probably go before a magistrate's court and have to get the consensus of a magistrate to issue a fine. This is allowing local authorities such as West Devon to directly impose a civil penalty on landlords for non-compliance without going to that step of a court or a tribunal. The landlord could then appeal against that to a tribunal, but this mechanism is quite different from the traditional one that you would have seen with environmental health and other services that the council have had in the past. So it's really important that we've set this policy out in some detail in accordance with the guidance, because at some point it will be challenged. I haven't got any practical experience of using this in a live case, so it's difficult for myself and the officers to give you any answers to some more detailed questions about, well, what does that mean? What are the implications going to be? Because at the moment, we simply don't know. So what we've done is put the best foot forward. We've put a policy in place which is detailed, which is comprehensive, and in my opinion, complies with the guidance which we've been given. Just one more thing, if I may, in terms of practicalities. Mrs. Blake said that there has been a slight upsurge in people making or homelessness inquiries to her team. I've looked at the figures for my team, which receive the complaints from tenants directly about their landlords, and the figures from last April to now are pretty much the same as the figures from this April to now. So we haven't seen an upsurge in numbers of complaints. What I would say anecdotally is that tenants are already holding the council to task. Tenants are aware of the renters' rights legislation. They are aware of the rights which it gives them. They are aware that they can put additional pressure on councils to take action on their behalf, and they are certainly doing that. So I think whilst the number of complaints hasn't increased, the complexity and the amount of tenants holding the council to account to take enforcement action certainly has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luscombe. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Edmonds.
Yeah, thank you. Well, from what Mr. Luscombe has just said, how is the council coping? How is your team coping with the additional workload in terms of preparing and dealing with the complaints that are coming through and looking ahead? From a resource point of view, Are you in the right place in terms of resource?
If I may, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Have we got the right resource in place? I think at the moment we've got the right resource in place to produce the policy and to deal with the volume of complaints that we've had so far. I do think when we get into what I call damp and mould season, so the time in the winter where it's traditionally we get more housing complaints, I think we need to look at our resources quite seriously. There is a new burdens funding that the government have handed down, I believe for 2 years, which Mrs Blake and myself are currently looking at in putting together proposals for a post or posts, depending on what we can afford. But what we need to do is not have a knee-jerk reaction of saying we need this type of person to do this specific job. We need to gather a bit more data in terms of what does the demand actually look like, what set of expertise do we need, and then think about what the availability is going to be out there when we ask for, we put a job advert out for somebody to deal with the impact of renters' rights, because no doubt all the other councils are doing the same, so that sort of skill set might be at a premium. So what we've done in those circumstances traditionally is looked across the skill sets we've already got and look to see whether we can develop people into roles and whether we can promote people into roles and then backfill some of those tasks which are more easy to fill with an appointment perhaps. But I can reassure councillors that myself and Mrs Blake are looking at this very seriously at the moment with a view to getting an advert out quite soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Luscombe. Has anybody else got any questions? Councillor Dexter.
Thanks. Specifically on 3.3, where the council, it says the council continues to adopt a collaborative approach with landlords, working with them to ensure improvements are made to properties. I just wonder if you would quickly run through the process and the outturn. How do we make sure that landlords actually deliver that which is required?
I might pass this over to Mr Luscombe again, if I could.
Certainly, Chair. Thank you. So, just to run you through quickly the process of a complaint. Somebody will make a complaint, usually online, usually using the button, which members might recall we put there to fast-track people into our service last year. We would, of course, contact the tenant first of all, get some idea of the extent of the problem. We'd then be duty-bound to contact the landlord to let them know we wanted to do an inspection of the property, give them some notice. We'd then meet the landlord on site and most likely discuss any issues that the tenant has with them, and where we can identify some fixes and give advice at that first meeting, we would certainly do that. I think looking at the guidance is quite interesting because it expressly says that local authorities aren't expected to serve any warning notices. We can go straight for civil penalties, which is more draconian that we've had in terms of sort of stages that we've had before. I think the reality is we'll look at our enforcement policy, which has been in place for some time, which says we work with people, we work with businesses, we work with landlords, and we would certainly give that landlord that opportunity to comply before we went for any enforcement action. So I think very much a common sense approach, but also weighing, it's difficult to be specific without a specific case before us, because everyone is different, everyone's got different factors involved in it, different case histories and different types of hazards before us. So I think it's very much looking at the professionalism of the officer to identify the risk and take appropriate action accordingly, but also being mindful of the new guidance there, which is asking councils effectively to take enforcement action more quickly. So it's a real balance that we're going to have to strike here, and we haven't had much experience of this new legislation yet, and I think time will tell, but I can reassure members that, our enforcement policy is to help people comply in the first instance. Thank you.
Yeah, are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's exactly the question, summed up better than I said it, about the interaction between current practice and the legislative changes. So I'm happy that we're not stepping on our own toes in that respect.
You might also find that we'll get approached as councillors more. I've had 2 people come in, one of which I've already passed over to Mr Sexton, because they are more aware of it, and she came in with photographs and time, which was brilliant. But, so we've also got that interaction between us as councillors too. Are there any other questions on this one? Oh, Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, so firstly, just to really endorse what's written here and what's just been discussed, I think a collaborative approach is exactly right, because we do need to make sure that there is affordable rented accommodation for people across West Devon. And what we don't want to do is take a knee-jerk punitive approach which then scares people off being landlords. So I think that's really positive. But I also think it's really heartening to hear a fairly sort of humble approach to this, saying this is new territory and we have to learn from experience. So my question really is, when might we check this policy against that experience? Would a year's time be appropriate to just sort of look at the case studies that we might have had and perhaps comparator councils that have, you know, other rural councils that are also dealing with this new legislation? Because I think there's nothing like being a learning organisation and learning from that experience. Thank you.
It is our policy to work closely with landlords. We don't want to scare them off. We've got a lot of good landlords out there, and we've always done that historically. With regards to the second one, I'm just going to ask Mr. Luscombe again to answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Elliott, Chair. Just to reassure members, there is a Devon-wide housing subgroup where like-minded professionals from all the councils get together to discuss approaches, so that we do get that continuity across Devon, and we're also able to learn from their experiences as well. I think reviewing the policy is a really sound idea. Depending on the volume of work that we get, I would say, and any issues that we come across, I think in my head I'm thinking 6 months to really have a look at this, and then perhaps a more formal review after a year, particularly if we come across problems or we feel that what we've got in place is being challenged. But I'm confident that, having followed the guidance quite explicitly, that it should be fit for purpose going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you, Mr. Luscombe. I think, Councillor Elliott, I think you're right. I think, and based on what Mr. Luscombe said earlier about the winter mould and damp season, I think it would be right to bring a report back probably at the start of next summer that gives an overview of what's happened in the last 12 months. So I think we can arrange to do that, if that's all right with the lead member.
Absolutely all right, thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Councillor West.
I think we all are happy with the fact that balance has been perhaps better established between renter and landlord. My concern is, though, I've had an experience of this through another organisation I was working with. What happens when the tenant is culpable for some of the issues within the property? How do you deal with that? Do you have a word with them as well as the landlord from that point of view?
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. I think we were able to give advice to landlords and give advice to tenants. I think also what we're seeing as a feature of this is there is a lot more information out there, particularly through AI at the moment, where tenants are very well informed in terms of not only what their rights are, but where those responsibilities lie and what the duties of the council are. So we're finding that tenants are much more informed, but of course the professional officers that we have are well used to giving advice to tenants. Sometimes that's advice that tenants want to hear, other times it's advice that tenants don't want to hear, but that's part of the job, you know. And what I say to my team is that we need to remain professional and we need to remain objective in terms of some of the situations that we come across, and deal with every situation on its own merits. And if that means telling tenants that they need to modify their behaviour to improve their living conditions, then that's what we'll need to do.
Do you feel that this will create issues for our officers and staff? Because to some extent, with the old system, to some extent, it would go to a judge, a magistrate, that sort of thing. Evidence would be given, that would be weighed. To some extent, in this situation, you're a little bit caught between a rock and a hard place, perhaps. What is that then the appeal process that's in there helps you mitigate that to some extent, the pressure on officers?
I think West Devon are lucky to have an incredibly good, dedicated team of officers who work in this subject area. This legislation puts additional pressure on them. I think We are used to making risk-based decisions. We are used to taking enforcement action. We haven't done it under this legislation or using this policy before, and as I've said, we are happy to learn, and there will be a sharp learning curve, no doubt. I think there is the comfort, if you like, for members that there is a tribunal process set up so that if it is appealed, then there would be a third-party objective view cast over the decisions that the council's officers have made. And we've also got the local government ombudsman who could be approached following any complaint process. So that, again, gives a third-party view of process as opposed to decision. So I think tribunal for the decision, ombudsman for the process gives that level of scrutiny, which should give members and the public comfort that we are carrying out our duties appropriately.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have we any further questions? Then I will propose the recommendations excuse me, that are on the screen. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mott, thank you. We're now in debate. Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Chair. Any improvements that we can make to the vision of housing, it has got to be a good thing, and it's reassuring to know that we are going to act with fairness and some sympathy towards private landlords, many of who are struggling now with the ever increasing burdens on them to be able to provide housing, which is probably why we're seeing a lot of them getting out of the market because of these extra demands on them. So it's reassuring to know that we're going to act proportionately and also offer advice to the tenants with regard to their way of living, rather than just automatically using this as a stick to beat the landlords. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else got any debate? In which case, shall we go to the vote? All those in favour of the proposals?
That's unanimous for both recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now up to Oakhampton and Lifton Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plans, and that is over to you, Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to finally bring back to you the Oakhampton Conservation Area Appraisal and also add in Lifton to that. Officers have been busy drawing these up and working with both the town councils and with Lifton Parish Council closely to be able to get this document ready to be able to go out to public consultation. I also would like to apologise. I do see on some of the documents that have been sent out to you show that some of the maps have maybe slipped a little and the photos are maybe misaligned in some places. That will obviously be checked and rectified before that goes out. You'll note in Oakhampton there's a few additions and one reduction within the area plan, and similar with Lifton. So basically this is just to recommend that we go out to public consultation so that we can then use these important documents once they've been fully debated and checked at another meeting to help inform our officers with regard to applications going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, sorry, Jan, I can sit up. Councillor Goffey, I beg your pardon.
Not a question, sorry. I don't need the microphone, as you know. Just to say what an excellent document this is and thank the people who put it together. Thank you, Councillor Mott.
Debate, but never mind. Shall we have the proposal, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the proposal as per the screen and on page 65 of the agendas that it's recommended that the Hub Committee approves the commencement of consultation on the draft conservation area appraisal and management plans for Oakhampton and Lifton. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second that. And we are now in debate, if anybody's got any debate. Councillor Moody.
I'd just like to say thank you very much to Belle for all her hard work. She helped Tavistock Town conservation area upgrade as well, and has done a superb job with this yet again. And it's great to see that this work is being done to protect our heritage within our towns and villages. Thank you.
Echo that. Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you. It's a good document, very comprehensive, and obviously I speak on behalf of Lifton, so I welcome this. There will be some challenges in delivery, I think, in terms of traffic, overhead power cables, etc. Very challenging, but this is a good opportunity to have that discussion and see what comes out of that. So it's excellent. Of course, we need to get that right balance between these objectives and balance that with the needs of residents and future growth of the village and the local economy. But overall, good document. I hope that there's a good response to the consultation, so we can have a healthy debate.
Excellent, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any debate before we go to the vote? Councillor West.
Thank you. Yeah, when I look at these, I am amazed at what are each in these settlements in terms of the history, the background that goes on. I mean, I've visited Oakhampton a couple of times, but I hadn't quite realised that was related to that, and that came in there. And this is really, really great to look at that and see these things. And I think in the world we're living in at the moment, in terms of the demands and pressures we have on us around building and that development, this is a great opportunity to actually saying, this is where we are, this is where we're at, this is what we want to keep. And moving forward, how we can look to the past sometimes to help us inform the future, which is always a valuable thing to take into account as we go forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor West. There's no more debate. Shall we go to the vote, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous for the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. We're moving on. We're now on Councillor Elliott with the West Devon Cultural Strategy. Over to you, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you very much. So I'm really delighted to be presenting this draft strategy to the hub meeting today. And sometimes when we present strategies, it's something that we have to have because it's in legislation or we're renewing a strategy. But this is something that as a council we agreed we wanted to prioritise. And so it's really good to have a new strategy. And I wanted to thank the team, so Susanna Hunter and Neil Hawke, who are on the benches behind us, who did a lot of work with the consultants, FEI, to bring this to fruition. And the strategy is based on a number of strands of evidence. So an initial phase was mainly sort of desk evidence, so looking at participation, looking at statistics that are nationally available but can be drilled down to the local level to look at things like participation, audience numbers, and even to look at different wards and the profile of cultural participation across wards. So that was stage one. And then based on that, stage two brought together a group of cultural stakeholders, and we had 3 workshops, 2 online and 1 in person, to really get a view of perspectives around the table. And as well as that, we had a survey that was available to all members of the public to respond to. So triangulation of different amounts of evidence that has culminated in this strategy. And rather than going through it in minute detail, I think I'll just focus on the 6 key priorities and explain why they're the priorities and why they're important, because I think that frames it helpfully for then sort of concluding on what next. So firstly, I think we have to be really proud of the place that we live in. I think we all love West Devon and Dartmoor at the centre of it. So one of the first priorities of the strategy is to even more celebrate those distinctive places and landscape. Secondly, the evidence gathering found that there was a huge amount going on across the whole of West Devon. So not just in Tavistock and Oakhampton, but also up in Hatherley and Lifton, in Chagford, etc. So there's a huge amount going on, but a lot of it is reliant on volunteers. There's very few professionals across West Devon taking a lead in culture. So the second priority is to sustain culture and volunteering. The third principle is that we need to increase cultural participation. Now, this may seem slightly counterintuitive because the strategy also says that there are high levels of cultural participation. If you take a real sort of broad bucket approach to what counts as cultural participation, you can get up as high as 94% of people have done something in the last year. But that's not the same as people doing things week in, week out, getting to know their local groups. So we really do want to increase cultural participation. That's number 3. 3 more to go. The fourth one is developing the creative economy. And I think one of the important things about this cultural strategy is it is not a siloed report that stands alone, and it is really important for the visitor economy. We know that at the moment we have a lot of day visitors to West Devon, and we would dearly like them to stay a little bit longer and spend more money with us, because that will boost our local economy. So more work is needed in the creative realm to boost the economy. Number 5 is building regional and strategic connections. So there are some excellent examples of this. So, for example, on Friday, I'm planning to go to Stone Lane Gardens, just outside Chagford, and the Miracle Theatre Company are coming to do Peer Gynt. So they're based in Cornwall, they're coming to Stone Lane Gardens, and I can see that they've got a tour going all round Devon and Cornwall. So that's an example of really best practice in terms of regional and strategic connections. But another example of best practice would be leveraging in more funding from national organisations like Arts Council England, like the Big Lottery Fund. There are a number of philanthropic funds that we could be applying to. And we know from some of the desk work that's been done that we're really not leveraging in as much funding as we could. So somewhere like Wren Music has managed in the past to get money from Arts Council England, but very few places have been lucky in terms of getting that grant funding. So that's number 5, is building those regional and strategic connections. And the final one is to strengthen cultural leadership and delivery. And I think this is really what sort of leads on to the practical next steps. So we need to be aware at West Devon that as a council, as a borough council, we do have a role to play in the cultural ecosystem, but also we have to acknowledge that it's a complicated ecosystem and that we are not cultural experts. We are focused on delivery, on waste collection, on landlords. So we can play a catalyst role, and we can do a little bit of pump priming, but we really do need to strengthen cultural leadership and delivery in terms of the cultural sector across West Devon. So what we're asking in the recommendations is firstly that Hub approves the adoption of the cultural strategy, but also the second part is important, that we will have a more practical report setting out our approach to developing a cultural hub that can be considered in the autumn. So the idea would be a small amount of pump priming investment together with partners, led by an advisory group that stems directly from the development of this cultural strategy, so that we really have a pathway for the future and can leverage in more funding, so that we're not trying to do it all on our own, but we're the sort of yeast in the bread, if you like, to make things happen. So I will end with that very domestic simile.
Thank you, Councillor. That was very thorough. I enjoyed that. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? So Dexter.
Thanks. I thought that was a great report. On page 177, where it deals with the governance issue, it says West Devon Borough Council is being asked to convene and support the cultural partnership during the initial phase. I just wonder if it's possible to expand on that just a little.
Yes, I'm happy to say a bit, and then if Neil or Susanna want to come in, that's fine. So, as I said, during the development of the strategy, we had the consultants on board, FEI, and they convened 3 meetings of a cultural stakeholders group. That included the representatives from the National Park, from the Dartmoor Preservation Association, from a couple of town and parish councils. We also had cultural providers. So all in all, there were about 35, 40 people who were engaged in some way or another and who attended those different meetings. They were all very pleased to get to know each other and keen that there was some sort of continuation of that. So what we're trying to do is get the balance between continuing that but not allowing it just to become a talking shop. So to have a sort of real purpose for saying, let's bring this stakeholder group together, but then let's have a clear practical plan about what's going to happen going forward. So the convening, we've already got the list of people. We can look at that and see if anyone else needs to be added, but it's that sort of practical administrative task.
Are you happy with that, Mr. Councillor Dexter? I'm back on the part there. Anybody else have anything further? No? Do you want to do your proposal then, Councillor Elliott, please?
Okay, well, I've already said quite a lot.
I think you've said it once, but... Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Mott.
My apologies, Chair. Can I get some clarity where 214 down to 217 talks about the cultural hub and the process for commissioning a cultural hub? Could you just explain that a little further for me, please?
Yes, so that's a good practical question. I think it's important to say that this is not set in stone. This is just some ideas for how we would take it forward. So what the empirical work around the strategy showed was that there's very little leadership across West Devon. So one approach to solving that would be to commission a group, probably a consortium of 2 or 3 different organisations, to do 3 things. 1, to apply for more funding to keep themselves going in the long term. But second, to provide support and mentoring, increase the number of volunteers, for example, look at ways of increasing inclusion in cultural events. And thirdly, not just to sort of be talkers and administrators, but to be pivotal in putting on a programme of events. That's quite a lot to ask for an organisation to get together and put those 3 strands together. So that's where we need to talk to the cultural stakeholders. We need to decide on the balance of those 3, and we need to attract some further funding, because the idea is we wouldn't be going it alone. We would be trying to leverage additional funding, potentially from the Duchy, who are really interested in Dartmoor and investment, potentially from Dartmoor National Park, but we need to think about other ways that we might attract some funding in the short term to act as the sort of seed corn for the future. Does that explain it a bit more? I'm happy to answer other questions. It's difficult getting the right level of detail.
It does for the purposes of this. Perhaps we could chat further again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so having said a lot already, I think I will just say I will formally move the recommendations as they are on the screen, and we're requesting that you approve the adoption of the cultural strategy, which is in Appendix A, and then agree that a further report setting out in more detail the answer to Councillor Mott's questions on developing a cultural hub will be considered in the autumn, and that then gives us a bit more time to discuss between ourselves and pool expertise. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I'll second that, and we'll move into debate then, if anybody's got any debate. Councillor Jury.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Elliott, for really good explanation. It's a really interesting and thought-provoking report, and I welcome it entirely. I think it's particularly important against a backdrop where successive governments over recent years have put more and more grant arts funding through arm's length organisations and non-departmental public bodies with SLAs, service level agreements, that are aimed at increasing participation and so on, which naturally tends to gravitate that funding towards the bigger centres of population. But we really have something here to offer, and we also have, I think, a great need in this area. So I'm really pleased as well to see the strategies, particularly the one about leveraging more money or more grant bids to those arm's length organisations, perhaps, but also the way that this ties in with our other council strategies. So in particular, supporting our communities, supporting well-being, but in addition, the way that it ties into our economic strategy as well, particularly with two strands. One, the tourism economy, and I think, you know, the sort of things we're talking about doing here, energise and populate the spaces that we have that people will be coming to visit, and secondly, supporting town centres, which need all the support they can get. So I really welcome this document and the further work that is going to be done in this area. So I will be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Moody.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Elliott, I think this is a brilliant strategy. For someone who's been involved in local performing and playwriting and whatever in Tavistock, from Tavistock Edge to Tavistock Fringe, I know how much hard work goes into these performances, and this sort of level of support is very, very welcome. And I also understand from Councillor Jury that I do understand the importance on the economy of local towns. It draws people in. Just recently we had Tavistock Fringe, where Tavistock was buzzing with people coming in and spending their money in the local area. I think that's so important. The one thing that we have found over the 10 years that I've been involved is that one of the most difficult things, there are some good children's theatre groups in Tavistock, but it's very difficult to engage with young people in the performing arts. There is some, but I'd love to see just one part of this strategy focusing on engagement of young people. I take the point that when you're performing and you're doing all and dancing or singing or whatever, it's good for your soul. You feel happy, you feel better, and it covers all ranges of abilities. But I think if we could focus a little on engaging, I don't know why it is that we have found, we've got 25 people in our group, we've got one young person, and it would be nice to get more and more people into performing arts. But there is one, Theatre Train is one that does some very good performances in the town hall, where it's all children, and that's an exception. But generally for local groups, I don't know whether other people find the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dexter.
Thank you. I seem to recall an annual economic report, Councillor Jory will probably put me right on this, which reports on the visitor economy and the number of people who visit for 1, 2, 3, etc. days, and that's been in long-term decline for the last 5 years since COVID. And I thought this might well be something that could really help to reverse that. And I'm just wondering if there's any metric that we can apply when we're considering this report in more detail. How do we know it's succeeded is the question, and that a metric may well be tied into the vitality of the visitor economy.
That was a question there, but we'll allow that one. No comment. Anybody want to make a comment on that? That's a jury.
Thank you. I think those metrics are quite important, and in the forward plan, you may note that the next meeting we have on the 15th of September, there is a report about the visitor economy, which is being worked on by the economy team at the moment, having had some work done on that by an external consultant, and that will, I think, give us some of that information, but also perhaps the metrics that we might use for monitoring that situation beyond now.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Councillor Jury.
Thank you, Councillor Renders. I would just like to point out that in Oakhampton at the weekend, on Saturday we had Oakie Pride in Simmons Park, and on Sunday was Oakie Music Day. So I think things happen without us necessarily being aware of them. The funding for these is raised locally. And of course we have the wonderful Foundation Trust, which used to be called the United Charities, which do help with things like this. Museum of Dartmoor Life has also had Arts Council grants, and we have found it very much depends on who's putting in the application and how well they are known by the Arts Council. That's been our experience.
Thank you very much for that. Does anybody else have any more debate? In which case, Councillor West, waving at me. You're too far away.
I think what Councillor Goffey's just said sums up totally where we are. This is why we need this strategy, because we need to know the tricks of the trade. We need to get people who are experienced, have been getting these grants to help us with that. For me, there's two things about this. There is a great synergy about this. As Councillor Jury said, it fits into the visitor economy, it fits into this, it fits into that. And this overriding strategy will help us do that. It also puts some legacy in place, because we've not really had something like this before. This will give help to organisations going to the Arts Council in terms of, well, how does that fit in with your local area? Are you being supported by the principal authorities, in this case, us? So I think, having been partly involved in this, I think this really is a great initiative, and the opportunities this could bring in the future is quite big from that point of view. So I'm very happy this is going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor West. There's no more debate. Shall we go to the vote, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous for the two recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. We're on item 11, which is debt write-off, which I think is Councillor Edmonds again, is it not?
Indeed.
Over to you, good sir.
Thank you, Councillor Renders. Overall, the report shows that the council wrote off just over £116,000 of unpaid debt for the final quarter of 2025-26. 43,000 of this was approved under delegated powers, with £73,000 requiring member approval. The main reasons for write-off are insolvency, death, or debts being too old or too small to pursue cost-effectively. Council tax makes up the biggest share. There are 31 cases totalling around £33,800. There's also 3 cases over £5,000 as detailed in Appendix A, which is a restricted document. Just one business rate write-off in this quarter, an historic case over £5,000 linked to a failed business. Again, details are set out in Appendix A. For housing benefit payment overpayments under 5,000, 6 cases have been written off for a total of 5,500, mainly where the debtor is insolvent. Details of a debt of over 27,000 are set out again in Appendix A. There was also a small amount of sundry debt of 3,600 written off relating to unpaid rent where the company's gone into liquidation. The report confirms that all recovery actions are exhausted before anything is written off. Collection rates, as I said earlier, remain strong, especially for council tax, so these write-offs represent a small and expected part of overall income collection. In short, the write-offs reflect debts that realistically can't be recovered, mostly due to insolvency or legal limits, with good collection performance still being maintained overall. And the report recommendations, it asks the committee to note that the Section 151 officer has authorised the write-off of individual debts totalling £42,948.52 and seeks approval from this committee for write-off of debts over £5,000 totalling £73,419.50. Thank you, Councillor Renders.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor West.
Thank you for the report. As my colleague next to me suggested, the sign of the times with a number of insolvencies compared to last year, and we always seem to have these spikes and troughs in insolvencies, don't we? But my biggest concern is the overpayment in housing benefits of over £5,000, £27,287.20, and it's considered a non-recoverable overpayment. I've got to ask the question, how on earth did we get ourselves in this situation that that amount of money has been paid out, and under what circumstances? It seems incredible to me, and it's just one case.
I'll set that one over to Mrs Hodgkins, please.
As it's an exempt item, am I okay to speak to that?
I think if you've got
Please
to be
don't put yourself in a situation.
I would rather go into part 2 if we're going to do that.
There is an explanation in the appendix, in Appendix A. Does it not summarise this circumstance?
I'll ask later, because obviously I may not have seen that as it's...
Councillor Dexter.
Yes, I presume all these have been fully provided for in the account anyway. And I'm just wondering if Mr Buckle could highlight our rules or our approach to making provisions against possible bad debts.
Are you okay with that? Mrs Buckle.
Yes, thank you. So we undertake a calculation each year with regards to providing for bad and doubtful debts, with regards to all of our debts. With regards to business rates and council tax, the formula that we apply looks at the payment profile of years gone by. So we look at the amount that has been received through an age debt analysis of previous debts and apply that percentage to the debts year on year going backwards. So, for example, we might say that if a debt is a certain age, we would provide, say, 30%. If it's a different age, it might be 20%. There is a formula that we use, and that is audited by Bishop Fleming, our external auditors. So it's a formulaic approach for both business rates and council tax, but it is on past recovery rates. That's what informs that bad debt provision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just go back to the previous question raised by Councillor West? If I look at the restricted document, Appendix A, on page 202, there is quite a good explanation of the circumstances which resulted in this housing benefit overpayment. Perhaps if Councillor S would just like to have a look at that, but if you've still got any queries regarding that write-off, that he'd like to raise them with me, and I will speak to Mrs Hotchkiss, said we'll be able to give, I hope, a full explanation if required.
Are you okay with that?
I'm very happy with that, thank you. I didn't want to put anybody in a situation.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Is there are we in debate? Any further questions? If you'd like to do your proposal, I will second and
move the recommendations that are on this screen, which I highlighted earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to second, and we can then move into debate if anybody's got any debate. I was going to say, it never ceases to amaze me how much we get back, and you think there's 31 cases out of how many? I think people paying the council tax and all the other things that go with it. So yes, well done everybody. I think it's worth an applause there.
Well, It's a good point. With a collection rate of 98.13%, I think speaks for itself.
Yes, I agree
such difficult
wholeheartedly.
times.
Shall we go to the vote? All those in favour, please.
That's unanimous for those recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you everybody. I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah. I call the meeting to an end. Thank you all for your attendance.